Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Humans Are Just Average, and that makes them dangerous. Written by firefighter Raven. Itan Azal listened to the slaver deliver his sales pitch before halting him by raising his hand. "Let me see what you have," he demanded. As always, slavers were extremely obsequious when it came to dealing with Gokan nobles. The slaver bowed and replied, "As you wish, Lord." Itan smirked at that response. He still wasn't used to being referred to as a lord. He only recently reached his age of maturity and finally inherited all his late sire's lands and property. His maternal grandsire had managed his lands after his sire died and raised Itan with all the skills a noble needed. Humanity wasn't one of those skills. He was often haughty to people he saw as below him. He saw non-Gokan to be especially inferior and expected deference from them. After all, he was a Gokan noble, and only the royal family were above him. Rank was meat and drink to the Gokans. Those that had it flaunted it, and those that didn't tried to obtain it. Etan's sire had attained his rank for his abilities and exceptional service to the king. Etan assumed those same abilities had been passed out to him. After all, the gods put the nobles over everyone else. One of his first needs was to display his power by obtaining new slaves to work his lands. What good is a title if you can't flaunt it over others? So here he sat, unwilling to admit that he was in over his head, accompanied by his morsel steward and Ratriak bodyguards. He conferred with his steward about which slaves would be the most useful from the selection of the usual enslaved species. While the steward negotiated prices, Etan casually looked around, and that is when he saw another slave inside the ship. Its arms and legs were shackled, even if it was already locked in a cage. Etan couldn't see its face because there was a hood over its head. He looked at the slaver. "Why isn't that one being presented?" "Lord," the slaver replied. "The hooded one in the ship," Etan said. "Ah, you mean the human," the slaver answered. "He's bound for the mines in the Dakari sector. Humans are too dangerous to serve in any other capacity, especially this one." "I've never heard of a human before," Etan continued. "Bring him forth." "But Lord, the human is not worthy of—" "Now!" Etan interrupted. The slaver bowed his head. "It shall be done." He waved to a pair of his henchmen who pulled the stun batons from their belts. One of them approached the cage, unlocked it, and opened the door. He pulled on the shackles to get the slave moving. One of them stayed just out of reach, its baton at the ready. It was slow going with the leg shackles, but they eventually had him standing before Etan. "Remove his hood." As the slaver complied, it revealed the slave was also wearing a gag. "Why is it gag? Does it have large fangs or something?" Etan inquired. "No, my lord. He's just really annoying and disrespectful," answers the slaver. Turning to his steward, "Have you heard of these humans before?" "No, my lord," the steward answered before turning to address the slaver. "Where are these humans from? What system?" the steward demanded. "KX-2489 system in the Dratic sector. The humans call it Sol," the slaver began. "It's not surprising that you've never seen one. They are low-tech and haven't even left their system yet. The Zerinkan have been known to capture individual humans for study or experimentation. Unsuitable specimens are sold into slavery or to the fighting pits." Etan sat up at the mention of fighting pits. He enjoyed them immensely and imagined himself to be a true connoisseur of the martial arts used in the pits. If he had a fighter of his own, that could bring him fame. "How do they fare in their matches?" Etan asked. "If they are trained in some fashion, they are above average," the slaver continued. "Their planet has a higher than average gravity, so they are stronger than most." The slaver pointed at Etan's Ratriak bodyguards. "Humans aren't a match for them in strength, but they are stronger than the two Vasoth slaves at the end. Humans are intelligent, especially for how primitive his people are, but they can't come close to the Morsel steward. Their endurance is somewhere in the middle of most pit fighters. All in all, humans are just average pit fighters, and that makes them especially dangerous," the slaver finished. Eden looked confused and asked, "What do you mean by that?" The slaver replied, "They don't rely solely on one ability, but on all of theirs at the same time. And this one was one of their warriors when they caught him, so he is even more dangerous." Eden thought for a second before speaking. "I'll take him." Both he steward and the slaver looked at him with astonishment on their faces. "But my lord," the steward uttered. "It's not good," the slaver tried to reply. Eden gave both of them his most withering look. "I said, I'll take him." With no choice, they both acquiesced to his demand. "And I'll take all the rest as well," Eden replied. At this pronouncement, the slaver's attitude improved. Once the formalities of payment and transfer of ownership were done, the Ratriak led the slaves away. The hood was replaced on the human, but his leg shackles were removed. Otherwise, it'd take all day to get him to the slave pens. The steward approached Eden. "My lord, is it wise to have someone that dangerous on the estate?" Eden chuckled. "He won't be on the estate for long. I'm going to send him to fight in the pits." The steward smiled at that. "Excellent idea, lord. I'll start making the arrangements to book him passage on the next ship out." Eden was smug as he followed up. "You heard the slaver. He's not as strong as my guards, nor can he outsmart you, and I'm more than clever enough to handle him." It was in the middle of the night when a sound woke Eden up. He was annoyed to have his slumber disturbed. He wasn't sure what it was, but he thought there was a loud thump. He got up and threw on his robe, muttering to himself about the punishments the culprit would receive. Once he got to the door, he opened the slot that let him see into the hallway without opening the door. He could barely make out the pair of Ratriak guards that flanked the door. "What was that noise?" he demanded, but neither guard answered. "Answer me!" But still no reply. Eden closed the slot and opened the door. "I said answer me, or I'll send you to the pits." He exited the room and turned to look at the guards. "Well, answer me." It was then Eden realized they'd never answer him. Both guards were gruesomely dead, with their throats slit and blood all over the walls and floor. It still dribbled down from the wound and down their chests to pool at their feet. In his shocked state, it took him a moment to wonder how they were still standing. That is, when he noticed the thin but strong wire wrapped around their necks. The wire cut deeply into their flesh, and Eden followed it up to the access hatch in the ceiling. His head whipped around as he looked for danger. Then he went back into his room, slammed the door, and locked it. He looked around for his sidearm, but it was too dark. He flipped the switch for the light, and that was when he saw the steward's head. It was impaled on one of the bedposts. He started back towards the door when he came up against something solid. He felt another being's breath on his neck, and a hand pulling his head back. "You should have listened to the slaver," was spoken into his ear before he felt a sharp line of fire across his neck, and he struggled to breathe. And then he slipped into darkness. End of story. Story number 2. What Are They Made Of? Written by IvankoKostiuk. I had met more humans than most of our kind. Being part of the consulate on a human colony has certain perks in this regard. I was only an attendant for Princess Icon, not a diplomat, but I had found the humans possessed many admirable qualities, especially curiosity and daring. But they are short and slim, and I thought little of their ability to fight us. Which was fine, as they were more interested in trade and other things. The questions their members asked about our royalty during the king's funeral was that sort of well-meaning rudeness that I have found so often happens in interspecies dialogue. Yes, we have a king. Yes, the new one will be decided by combat between champions of the royal family. No, the king has no formal authority. No, that does not mean that they are purely ceremonial. They are still an important symbol among our people. They are still the spiritual leader, and they have a lifetime appointment, so their counsel is often sought by politicians. One, who I had found had become closer than appropriate to Princess Icon, while she had been posted on his world, asked, "Does it have to be your kind as champion?" The princess had been shunted off our homeworld as soon as she finished her studies. Her father had already decided her older brother, Prince Mikey, should be his successor, and had insisted the prince serve in the military to give him plenty of connections. All of the other children were sent away, especially to worlds with inhabitants we thought little of militarily. Could this human be her champion? Yes, I answered. But one strike from a prince's champion would likely kill a human, so he should reconsider. But they are a daring species, these humans. The prince was aware of the stories about the humans. One does not send millions of their own soldiers to a war they have nothing to do with and demand nothing for it without gaining reputation. How much Prince Meigi thought the human champion was an actual threat, I could not say. But he did not want the challenge to go through. He took our prime minister, all but threatening to abolish the monarchy to get the prince to agree. It was unseemly, understand, to be seen as refusing a challenge. I watched the warm-up matches with Princess Icon from her box. 2 professional fighters made their tributes and had a fierce and bloody match that managed to go 17 seconds before one was incapacitated. I asked the princess if she knew what her champion's strategy was. She smiled and asked how much I knew of humanity's history and culture. I confessed my ignorance, as she was much more interested in the matters than I. They are persistence hunters, she explained. They evolved to chase animals for miles and miles, over hours and hours, until the animals simply died of exhaustion. We, however, evolved from ambush predators that relied on camouflage and traps before using overwhelming power to kill our prey. The human strategy, she explained, is almost always endure, endure, endure. A human quarter had been established in the capital as a trickle of merchant-built businesses to buy our goods and sell their wares. As far as I could tell, they were all in attendance. We are not much for drawing attention to ourselves before a fight. The notion of entrance music was a surprise to us, but the humans knew what to expect. An ancient hymn from their world, a song of love and loss, and a call for the endurance to stay the course from distraction. I learned the poets who created it were called Nickelback. We watched as the human champion danced his way into the ring, while the human spectators sang with the song. The champion climbed onto the wall dividing the ring and pumped his fists while he sang, and the humans touched him, desperate to give him their sacred manna. The fight lasted an unbelievable amount of time, at nearly 12 minutes. The human darted around the ring in the first seconds, in desperation to avoid being hit, but then he did something I did not expect. He smiled. Princess Icon took the time of the match to expand upon the human strategy of endure. The human team sports all last more than an hour, a time so long I found it difficult to believe. What I found impossible to believe is that the pinnacle of human sporting is a marathon race, which she told me was 42 kilometers, and that even elite humans take almost 2 hours to accomplish this. What I found impossible is that this is done to commemorate a human who ran 490 kilometers over a day and a half. Humans who wish to protest some injustice often do such through feats of endurance, standing for hours or days outside their government buildings. All the homes of the people they think have done wrong are the most basic. They refuse to eat until their demands are heard. They take great walks from their homes to the seats of their government and refuse to leave. They prop themselves up on flagpoles for a year. At least one of their tribes, before the human unification, became independent partly through groups of acts of endurance. Human history is full of people who accomplish great things almost entirely by refusing to give up, often through injury and unbelievable odds. The first humans to fly only did so after countless hours of trial and error. The humans too small to play a sport called gridiron competed essentially by refusing to stop trying. Human artists who failed time and again before accomplishing great things are too numerous to count and impossible to choose just one. These people are treated as saints or gods. Human philosophers about life are full of affirmations that what matters is how hardship is endured. Put in the work, show up, no pain, no gain, don't back down, don't quit, don't give up. They are so different from us, I thought to myself. What are they made of? The champion, sure to be a living saint, spent almost 12 minutes fighting a man half again his height and more than 3 times his weight. And he did not just try to not be struck. He pushed the other fighter. When the prince's champion tried to retreat and breathe, the human chased him, taunted him, insulted him, pointed to places on his face he wished the other fighter to try and hit him. The prince's champion had no time to breathe, no time to run, no option but attack. And each attack exhausted him. The princess will be a fine king. Hopefully her counsel will mean closer relations with a race so ingrained in a philosophy of glory from surmounting difficulty. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vitmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.